What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with a Thursday night football preview, this time live rather than video format. Gonna do the same things as we typically do for these previews, except going over all your live questions along the way as well. So we'll look at the DFS slate, get an idea for how I'm attacking that, both for GPPs and for cash. And then afterwards, we'll go through the prize picks and underdog boards and go over a few pieces of value that I already have gotten exposure to, and that if they're still up, right? There's been a lot of bumps. There will be a lot of bumps when it comes to football that you should probably get to yourself. So first off, welcome on in. Hopefully you're having an excellent Thursday evening and are ready to go out there, hopefully take down a GPP or two and then cash out for a few slips. So we'll start off with a look at the DFS slate where we'll bring up our projections and go through how, first off, the field is going to attack the slate, right? We'll go over what some of the chalky scripts might be. And then afterwards, how you might want to attack it depending on what contest that you're entering. So first off, looking at the chalk, pretty easy to determine tonight, right? Anytime you have a 10-point spread, tonight I think it's like a 9.5-point spread favoring the Bills side, you're going to see a lot of exposure towards that side. It's not a coincidence, or it's not surprising by any means, but 4-2 Bill stacks are going to be by far the most prominent builds. I'd say number two would probably be a 3-3 stack, and then probably even like a 5-1 Bill stack. Two of the top three exposures, right, are going to be Bills heavy plays. So if you're looking to play in large field contests, just know that if you're siding towards the home team, right, the 10-point favorites, that you're not going to be alone. It doesn't mean that they're not viable. It doesn't mean that a Bill stack isn't going to win tonight. The more important part, right, what we want to focus on here is, how we're going to handle that, right? If you're playing in the large field GPP, if you're trying to take down 20,000 other entries, well, you're going to have to differentiate. We're going to have to try and find some leverage to the field and make some sort of stand to go out there and find yourself at the top. So there's a lot of differentiation we'll talk about here. I have to say I am one of the people that does buy the Bills heavy script. So for me tonight, right, especially in those large field contests, I'm going to have to spend a lot of time, right, figuring out where my pivots are going to be, right? Figuring out ways that are going to be, I'm able to get leverage to the field, because if I think the Bills are going to stomp them, which, most people tonight, right, kind of agree with that, then you're going to have to find a way to get different. So wanted to set the table there. I also like pointing out, like, the underdog script is always live, right? If there's going to be a ton of chalk on one team, well, just look at the 49ers Vikings game, right? I was a huge advocate for taking Vikings 3-3s, potentially even a 4-2 Viking stack or two, and look how that game turned out. So just know that even in the ugliest of scripts, right, even 10-point spreads like we have here, crazy stuff happens, right? Let alone when it's like a 1.5, maybe 3-point spread favoring one team. There's going to be a lot of madness, a wide range of outcomes there. It's the same thing is true even with the 10-point spread, right? This isn't college football. There's not 4 or 5 touchdown spreads that we're playing against here. They're much more realistic, right? Even the worst NFL team is really not all that much worse, right, than the best NFL team, right? There's a marginal difference there, right? You have superstars out there on that best team, but that worst team is still going to win that game like 3 or 4 times out of 10, right? Probably like 3, I'd say like 30% of the time, worst versus best. And in college football, it's like 0%, right? That worst team has no shot at beating the best. So just know that, right? Know that crazy stuff happens when you're playing NFL DFS and try to embrace that as much as humanly possible. So when we're looking at ways to get different, right? If you're going to play that Bills heavy stack, this mid-tier range is, I think, the place to get it done. And I'm not talking about like these 5, 6K players. By the mid-tier range, I mean like this 4, 5K range. So you've got the kickers down here, of course. You've got guys like Latavius Murray, who we'll get to here in a second, is a really good way to try and get a little bit different with the Bills stack. Or maybe even like a Kincaid captain, who is one of my favorite ways to try and get different here. So we'll go, player by player. We'll go through a few different ways that you can mix it up, but throw like the Bills defense into there, right? All of these kind of lower owned mid-tier options, you're going to have to mix 1 or 2 of them into lineups to get different, right? If your Bills exposure tonight is going to be like Josh Allen and then one of the wide receivers, right? Maybe it's a Diggs, maybe it's you throw Cook in there too, or Davis, right? And then you go down here and you play Deontay Hardy, like everyone's going to do tonight, or a Kadon, right? You use your 1 buyback as your value tier option on the Bucks. everyone is going to play that way, right? So if you're going to get different, I think a way to do so is to spend up a little bit, right? Spend up an extra like $1,500 to $2,000 and take a player that projects, a little bit better, right, than some of those lower tier options, but it's going to come in lower owned, right? And it's unfortunate, right, when you're spending up, right, with your value tier option, it means that you're going to have to spend down up top, right? There's a direct consequence, right, of having to spend more with your value tier option. But just know that in large field GPPs, it's going to be studs and duds, right? Everyone's going to play Josh Allen, right? A lot of people are going to take Baker as a buyback, right? Try and take at least one elite tier wide receiver, right? If they're not taking Diggs, they're probably taking an Evans or a Godwin, right? That's what the chalk build is going to look like tonight. They're probably going to mix in Hardy, like I said, because of the price decrease. Heck, you could even throw, I guess the ownership's not too crazy on any of the pure punts down there, but it's going to be a studs and duds kind of approach, right? Bills heavy, studs and duds is going to be by far the chalky build. And a way to kind of build, along with the chalk, right, still taking that Bills team is to take these mid-tier guys, right? A Bills defense, right, hoping that they score a defensive touchdown. I have to say, this is the kind of slate where I could see the Bills defense getting there, but also Baker Mayfield still getting there, right? Not a pure onslaught where maybe it's a defensive touchdown. Maybe it's because the Bucs are playing from so far behind where they have to drop back and pass 40 times, right? Where they're maybe throw an interception. Maybe there's 3 or 4 sacks because there's so many dropbacks where that Bills defense gets there, right? Is that piece of differentiation, but you still have 2, maybe even 3 players. Well, I'd say probably 2 players, probably not 3, from the Buccaneers that get there as well. So that's how I'm handling this slate. I'm trying to think of just outside the box ways to get different, right? Kincaid at captain, right? I mentioned that as a potential option. Without Dawson Knox, he got a ton of targets last week. In fact, it was pretty much the wide receiver 2 on the team ahead of Gabe Davis. So if you're a buyer in that narrative, you think that's going to continue this week. I think it would be a fool to think that, by the way. I'm still playing him at captain, but the other team's no doubt going to adjust for it, right? The Bucs saw the tape from last week, right? They saw how many targets Kincaid was getting. They're not going to let that happen, right? They're going to pay a lot more attention to him in terms of coverage. But if you think he can outduel that, which I do, I think he's a really talented tight end, then maybe he's really good at tight end, right? So there's, different ways that you can envision the slate going, that you can get there. And if you don't think they adjust, that's kind of the idea with you playing him at captain, right? If he doesn't adjust, if he goes out there and smashes like last week, at $5,000, he could easily be your optimal captain, right? $7,500 at that slot. I could see an 18 to 20 point ceiling from him. And at that kind of performance, if you're only spending $7,500 at captain, you can easily play like an Allen and a Diggs in that lineup. You can still take an elite tier option as a buyback as well, right? Whether that's a Mike Evans on his own, you could give Rashad White as a buyback. Maybe even a Baker plus one more, Bucs wide receiver, right, to finish out that kind of lineup. There's a lot of utility in getting to Kincaid, right? It's not just the ownership. It's also what you're getting with that salary relief at the other 5 spots. So there are a few different ways. Latavius Murray, of course, right? If the Bills are playing from way ahead, right, he's going to get more carries, right? So maybe it's the double running back script for the Bills, right? You could still throw maybe a Josh Allen in there, but if you're going to fade Josh Allen tonight, I think the double running back strategy for the Bills is a really good way to go about it. And now that he's $4,800, Murray, that is, he's not going to be like 30, 40% owned tonight. So you can take him as a little bit of differentiation, right? If he was going to be cheaper, like in that 2K range, like he was for the first like 2-3 primetime games that the Bills played in, then he would be 40% owned, right? Everyone's kind of caught on that Murray's getting carries, getting touches for this Bills team. But at nearly $5,000, no one wants to click on that, right? You've got Kincaid right there, $200 more, right? Everyone's going to make that decision. Heck, even the kickers, Bills defense are getting a few more clicks than what you're seeing with Murray. There are just a few, I think, sneaky ways here in this 4K range to get the differentiation that you're looking for. Bucs defense, anyone that's playing Josh Allen is live to get there as a defense. He is one of the more mistake-prone quarterbacks in all of the NFL. For as good as Josh Allen can be, the guy throws a lot of pick sixes, fumbles a lot, and he throws just a lot of picks in general. So if you're buying that narrative, which just for full transparency, I'm not getting to the Bucs defense, you could easily take them as a way to get different, right? Only 13% owned at flex. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on, and then afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about prop stuff. So they got Nick. He said, "What's up, bro? What's going on, Nick? What's going on, James? Hey there, Luke." So a 4-2 Bills with a kicker defense run back. Oh boy. Yeah, you're just trying to throw out my nerves at this point, right? Yeah, no, that's going to be real popular. You guys know this, right? Oh, the Tampa Bucks, right? They're still got to play somebody from that team. Let's play the kicker and assume they don't score touchdowns. Yeah, you're going to be real different with that one, right? I know you're just trying to get in my nerves there, Nick. Appreciate you. But yeah, that's going to be a chalky build, right? So what you want to try to avoid tonight is taking a 4-2. But, I mean, by the way, for buybacks on the Bucks, what I really like are some of these like unknown wide receivers. So I'll give you guys a few. Devin Tompkins is one of them. He plays quite a bit for Tampa Bay. You have, let's see, there's a few others down here. Actually, it's a little bit more expensive. Trey Palmer is their wide receiver 3. He doesn't project all that well in terms of points per dollar, but he's essentially unowned. So if you want to take a shot and hope that one of these wide receivers gets a 30-40 yard catch, which is entirely possible. In fact, I'd argue that it's likely, right, that one of these Tampa Bay wide receivers, takes a long shot out there at some point. It might not be a touchdown, but just, a splash play of some sort, especially if they're playing from behind. Who's not to say that it's a Trey Palmer, right? It might be Chris Godwin. It might be Mike Evans, right? But it also might be one of these unowned wide receivers that you could consider taking that are going to get playing time when they're out there in 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, which if you're a big believer in the Bills, by the way, you're going to see a lot of 4 wide receiver sets from the Bills. I should say from the Bucks. That's just what you have to do, right? When you're playing from, 2-3 touchdowns from behind. Real chalky option might be Deontay Hardy, right? He's like twice the ownership of those Bucks wide receivers, but it's still not out of hand, right? At this kind of price tag, you're not asking for all that much from Hardy, and he does play a decent snap share for Buffalo and has been pretty effective too. He's that slot, smaller type of wide receiver that relies on getting that separation, and to this point of the year, has been getting that separation. So he's been highly effective when he's been on the field. In terms of pure punts, there are a few that I like down here. Ko Kieft, as I think his name, he's a fullback / blocking tight end out there for Tampa Bay. He does get receptions from time to time and has scored touchdowns on primetime slates. So that's why I've got him in there. Even if they're playing from behind, right, he is utilized a little bit out there. So it's not like he'd be completely script dependent. And then Sean Tucker and Reggie Gilliam. Reggie Gilliam's probably going to play because Dawson Knox is out. Once again, though, he's more of like a blocking tight end / fullback position. So I wouldn't expect all that much from Gilliam. He has scored like 1-yard touchdowns before, rushing and through the air. So there is a precedent for him getting there. But the one I really like down here is Sean Tucker. And it's that, kind of gut play that you get from time to time. So don't take this as like a lock or something that you should tail, but just know that I'm playing a good amount of Sean Tucker tonight. And it comes down to effectiveness. It comes down to just pure principle, really, for me. It's why I'm so big on Jaylen Warren, right? It's why I've been beating the drum for him to get the ball for the Steelers for so much time, is the metrics for Sean Tucker as a rusher are much better than what you have for Rachaad White. And you may say that part of it is circumstance-based, right? Sean Tucker plays in garbage time a lot of the time. He plays on third down where the opposing defenses aren't really expecting the rush, right? Especially if you're bringing in like a Sean Tucker, who's pretty good as a wide receiver out of the backfield. Another reason to play him, by the way, right? He's only $200 and he's going to play snaps tonight as a receiving tight end. That's always attractive. But my hot take is at some point this year, he's going to be your starting running back for the Bucks. He's just the better player. Any metric you look at, he is leaps and bounds better than Rachaad White. And for whatever reason, a lot of these old school coaches, kind of like what you have down there in Tampa Bay with, I forget his name, the D corner Bowles, right? Is that who it is? It's Todd Bowles, who's their head coach. Hard-nosed kind of guy that's just stubborn as hell, refuses to let the young guy eat, right? So they've got somebody out there, Rachaad White, who's just, in my opinion, not a very good running back. He's backed up by a guy who's an absolute stud. Maybe it's tonight, maybe it's not, right? But you're talking about a guy who's what? 0.5% owned, literally no one's going to use them. You throw them in 5% of your lineups, that's 10x leverage, right? So that's what I'm talking about when I say I like Sean Tucker tonight. I'm not saying I'm using him in every lineup. I don't think he's a shoo-in to get there at all, but I do think at some point this year, and the best place to get to him is in Showdown, right? Like in a main slate format, right? He's like $4,000, right? On the main slate, that's the minimum price at running back. it's not the same as a $200 Sean Tucker, right? So I'm hoping that breakout performance is on a showdown slate, right? It might not happen, probably won't happen, right? But if it does, you're getting by far the most utility out of it. And he's unowned, right? He's going to be the same kind of ownership that he would be for that main slate at $200. So that's my hot take for tonight, would be Sean Tucker, hoping that maybe he gets that work as don't want to say like number one tight end, but like, I should say tight end, running back, at least like 1B, right? Maybe he gets like 35, 40% of the snaps, right? That would be a huge W for Sean Tucker, right? At that kind of price tag. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for tonight. And if it happens, hopefully we can make it work with the other 5 spots, because not many people are going to have Sean Tucker. Let's take a look at some lineup construction stuff. We'll build a lineup or two together, go over any last second DFS questions. And then afterwards, we'll talk about some props where there are some pieces of value that we can attack. So let's see. What about a double running back on the Bucks, White and Chase, with Baker injured? If anything, I would go White and Sean Tucker, by the way. Bills' run D isn't amazing. Slow down the Bills' offense. They have a decent run defense. When they were playing the Jaguars in that game, they ended up losing. Somebody, I think it was Etienne, he had like hardly any yards by halftime. And then in the second half, when they got worn down, right, is when they went out there and were effective. I'm okay with it, right? It's a outside the box kind of way to get different, right? If you play 2 running backs on the Bucks, you're instantly going to be different from the field. It's just that personally, I'd probably side with Tucker. I know that they have Edmonds in the fold, right? He's gotten a little bit of exposure. I don't know. Tucker's just the better running back to me. What's going on, Chansey? Of course, I got you for the stream. What's going on, Go Birds? Is Edmonds a free square? To be honest, I don't know why everyone's talking about Edmonds. Tucker, in my opinion, let's just look at the box score, I guess, right? Let's see why people are siding that way. I'd rather have Tucker. So let's see. Where's Edmonds at? So the box score for Edmonds, right? He hasn't played since week 2, right? He had 2 attempts, and he hasn't been targeted this year. Okay. Let's look at Sean Tucker, right? It's not that much better, but let's look at the game log at least, right? He's been active for almost every game. He had a game with 8 rushes. He had a game with 5 rushes, right? Both of these weeks, by the way, weeks 1 and 2, just to remind you, were when Edmonds was active, right? And look at this. Look who was the one actually getting the touches out of the backfield, right? It was Sean Tucker. So let's look at that. He had 13 touches out of the backfield. He had 2 receptions to that point. So he had, 15 touches over the first 2 weeks. Edmonds, in the same sample over the first 2 weeks, had 4 touches. So he had 4 times more touches for Sean Tucker. If people are talking about Edmonds as a free square tonight, I am all for that, because that's a huge mistake. He was on IR not the first 2 weeks when we were comparing those 2 sample sizes, right? It was apples to apples, and one had 4 more touches than the other. I don't know, man. I think the people out there are making a huge mistake if they're playing Edmonds over Tucker. That's just me. And of course, Tucker's got to be active tonight, right? They might make one of those 2 inactive. That's completely possible. If he's active, I know the one I want, right? I want the one that, when both were active, was the one getting the touches. At least to me, that's the way that I would side on that. So if we're building lineups together, I think you should try and start with your differentiation. So a lot of times people go out there like, okay, who should I take at captain and then move on? That's not how I like to build my showdown lineups. If I'm going to be siding towards more of a chalky build, which tonight, right, most of my lineups are going to be like 4-2 bill stacks. I'm going to have a ton of 3-3s. I meant to mention that. My most utilized stack will be 3-3s, and then it'll be 4-2 bill stacks. If I'm going to be starting with a pretty chalky build, right, even those 3-3s are going to be pretty chalky tonight, you want to start with your differentiation. So for me, I'd go down here, figure out a piece that I'm going to get different to the field with. And just for the sake of this video, right, we went through some of the 4K options that you could use as differentiation. Let's start there, right? So I'm going to go ahead and throw a Latavius Murray in. Now, the beauty with starting with the Murray as your differentiation is it kind of gets you thinking on a certain script, right? If Murray's going to get there at his price tag, which is inflated now, right, now that he's started to get, 5.9 fantasy points per game, right? It's not groundbreaking, but he does have a decent sample over the first 7 weeks. Right? If he's going to get the touches to get there, which he's going to need like 10 to 15 points, they're going to have to be playing from ahead, right? The Bills are going to have to be willing to run the ball quite often. So you can already start thinking along those lines about what kind of players benefit, right, from the Bills playing from ahead. And if I'm taking a captain, right, with Latavius Murray in my lineup, You could go Allen, right? That's a pretty obvious choice, right? Bills are rolling. Obviously, Allen's going to post some points, but maybe it's taking a player from the Bucs at captain, right? That's worth noting, right? Godwin and Baker are both technically questionable. Both are going to play tonight. That's already been stated by the team multiple times, so I wouldn't worry about that at all. Maybe you take Godwin at captain, right? You hope that they're playing from behind, that a PPR monster like Godwin, right, maybe gets you that 7-8 catch game that you're looking for, gets into the end zone. That's even better at that kind of price tag, and is your optimal captain. That is more than possible to happen. And then, you might want to throw Baker in there, right? Low correlation between those two. And then now round out your lineup with the last three spots, right? You've got $8,100 remaining, so you could easily take a Josh Allen there. You probably want at least one more player from the Bills, because once again, right, we still have Murray in this lineup, right? For him to get there, the Bills have to be kicking some ass early, right? For him to get the kind of carries that we're hoping for. And if that's going to be the case, right, we need a few more Bills players. So let's go ahead and let's take James Cook. Let's make this a double running back lineup out there for the Bills. And because we have a Josh Allen, right, we want at least one wide receiver. So I'm going to go down here and throw Deontay Hardy as our last man in, right? So if you made this your lineup, you left this kind of salary on the table, you would have no problems being unique. In this kind of lineup, if you'd rather take a Baker Mayfield at captain, right, and then go with maybe a Godwin that flex instead, that would probably be viable too, right? In this kind of lineup, maybe you're hoping that Baker scores a 1-yard rushing touchdown, with the tush push being a thing, right? Players getting their naked at captain, quarterbacks that is, happens a lot more often now, right? Obviously, guys like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, right? I've been doing that for years at this point. But now you have guys like Kenny Pickett, for example, who in a showdown slate against the Rams last week got there as the optimal captain because he put up just some receiving yardage and then ran in a 1-yard rushing touchdown. There was one optimal wide receiver from the Steelers in that lineup. I think it was George Pickens, because he got over 100 yards, got that bonus, and then 2 running backs. It was a Najee Harris, a Jalen Warren lineup with a couple Ram buybacks, or it was a 4-2 that ended up taking it down with a naked Kenny Pickett at captain, right? Doesn't happen very often. You don't see that very often, but because of the tush push, he scored that 1-yard touchdown in that game. That's exactly how we got there. So this kind of lineup could easily get there. Let's say you wanted to use Josh Allen at captain, right? That would be perfectly viable here too. Just the main thing that we're doing here to try and get different, right, was leaving some salary on the table, taking a low-owned Latavius Murray, and making sure that we were going after a script, right? So that's how you should be building your lineups tonight. If you're going to take a Josh Allen at captain, right, try and leave some salary on the table. That would be my recommendation. I wouldn't go out there and spend all your salary. So if you did this with a Baker Mayfield and you only had $900 left, I wouldn't feel great about that, right? That's probably not enough salary to leave on the table, because this lineup right here would be duplicated a good amount tonight. So it depends on the contest you're entering. This was like a single entry. Maybe it's like a 20 max. I'm probably more okay with it, right, than the large field 150 maxes. But in 150 max kind of contests, this probably isn't enough to get different, just for some transparency there. Let's see if there's any fantasy questions. If not, let's talk about some props. Looks like we're good to go on that end. If you do have any fantasy questions, go ahead, throw it down in chat. I will answer them. But let's look at the prop boards, where there are a few props that I've already taken that got bumped. That's just kind of how it works, right, when you're value hunting out there on boards. But this prop at the bottom here, this Rachaad White versus James Cook prop, is egregiously mispriced. And let me show you why, right? So I took this in combination with another rivals matchup. You may have seen that post over on Twitter, was a free slip that I posted over there. It was a Josh Allen versus Baker Mayfield pass attempts prop. So it was another one of these rivals, and I took the Baker Mayfield side. So of course with that, right, by taking Baker Mayfield attempts, you're hoping that they're throwing the ball more, right, running the ball a little bit less because they're playing from behind, and in vice versa, right, you've got the James Cook over for yards, right, compared to Rachaad White, and the under, right, for Josh Allen pass attempts. The idea, of course, right, is to play on that correlation. They did take the pass attempts one off, so we can't play that, but it's still an insane prop, this bottom one. So let me show you why. So if we just look at their projections, right, they've got Rachaad White at 45.5. So let's add the 4.5 yards to his projection, right? Let's give him the 50 yards. Well, they've got, let's see what they've got him at now. They've got James Cook at 53.5 yards, right? So there's still a 3.5 yard, difference there, 3.5 yard discrepancy. And then when you look at the odds, it becomes increasingly obvious how good the value is. So if we go down here to Pinnacle, which is, in my opinion, one of the sharper books out there, it's not the sharpest for every sport, but pretty good. So if we take a look at their rushing yard prop, they have it minus 148 for the under at 45.5. Now, I got them at 49.5 yards for an under earlier in the week. 45.5 is still minus 150. That's crazy, right? And then you're going against James Cook, who's up here at 53.5 yards in slightly juiced over, right? He's minus 125 towards the over. So not only do you have a 3.5 yard discrepancy here, right, compared to where it should be on Prize Picks, you have a prop that's juiced over versus a prop that's minus 150 under, right? So you've got the value on both sides. You've got the yard discrepancy, the 3.5 yard discrepancy that you're worrying with the projections here. It's about the best prop that you're going to find on sites, right? It's not a shoe-in to get there by any means, but in terms of value, it'd probably be at least minus 200, right? So that's by far the best prop on the site. If you have another prop that you want to mix with it over there on Tampa Bay, go with it. The one that I put on here for the sake of the video with this under on Chase McLaughlin points over here on DraftKings, just to give you an idea of his odds. I believe it was like minus 135 the last time I checked, but let's double check it. So kicking points, he's minus 120. So maybe that's not the best pairing, right? So the odds have kind of gone a little bit closer there. Let's check Pinnacle. Let's see where they've got him, right? So they've got him at slightly juiced over, actually. So it looks like the odds on that one are starting to flip. So I probably wouldn't pair him with that at this point, right? So I would take this really good prop, and we have the time on stream here, right? We're going to talk props for another 5-10 minutes. We'll find a little pairing for you guys down there. So if we're going to look for something, let's refresh Pinnacle. Let's get the latest odds that we possibly can and see what we can find. So this minus 139 on Baker rushing yards looks pretty decent. Let's see where DraftKings has them at, right? I could bring up my prop sheet, which would probably make this a lot easier, but just for the sake of the video, right, to make sure you guys can follow along, we'll do it on this. So they've got them at even money on DraftKings. So perhaps that'll start to drift towards this minus 140 number over here on DraftKings soon. One thing I've noticed is that Pinnacle typically bumps way before sites like a DraftKings of FanDuel do. So if you're looking for some of the early line movement, it's usually always on Pinnacle. So just keep that in mind if you're somebody that does a lot of line shopping here with these sites. So that could be a potential move. Let's throw it in the cart, right? Rushing yards. What's his rushing attempts? He's at 2.5. What's his rushing attempt prop over here on DraftKings? Just out of curiosity. He's even money there. Okay. It was worth at least taking a look at. Let's go through this board a little bit more. So they've got Kadon minus 150. That's a prop that's not available, though. Let's see. A lot of close to even money props. Godwin is minus 143 for the under on receptions. So let's add that one in, actually. That's probably the best one available that we've checked so far. Let's see what he is on DraftKings. I'd imagine he's probably like minus 135 for the under, something like that. They're a little bit more conservative. Yeah, look at that. Minus 135 for the under. Reason I say that is DraftKings a little bit more conservative with their juice. Pinnacle gives you the true odds, right? They go out there, they throw the whole minus 140 something on it. We'll keep an eye on that one. Dalton Kincaid props. He's way juiced towards the over. Love that I got him at 35 yards earlier this week, 35.5. So we could potentially take Kincaid, but we do already have a James Cook prop in there. So probably don't want to throw that in, right? We want to go with a two-man. At least personally, I like two-mans. And I know someone out there is going to say, oh, it's not the best EV props. It depends, actually. So I will have this conversation. Actually, like I said, we have time to talk about props. The people that talk about 4 or 5-man slips being the plus EV props are all assuming that the hit rates for props are the exact same. When you account for the fact that your first few props you're entering on any slate should be by far your most confident, right? Should probably have a higher hit rate than, let's say, like props like 8 and 9 that you're entering in any given slate. But you have to adjust for that when you're accounting for the EV of your slips. And a lot of people that have tried to account for that are way too conservative in their projections. And in fact, most people, like the sites that do plus EV betting, which I respect, it's a great way to go out there and find an edge with DFS. But unfortunately, a lot of those sites don't think about that aspect of it, right? They don't think about the different hit rates of certain props. They don't think about the fact that props 4 and 5, right, in a 5-leg parlay have drastically different odds to hit than props 1 and 2. And now maybe you can find 5 props that you really, really like, right? By using 6, 7 different sports, right, to pull that value. But you're going to have like one slip a night that's like that, right? You're going to have like one slip at most, right? If you're doing it properly, that you feel that good about with like a 5-man parlay. That's why I do 2-man cards. The analysis based on your, expected hit rate is completely different. So I've heard that argument before. Just, I don't know. I wanted to rant about that for a second because it's such a misnomer in the community. People that think that the hit rate should be the same for every prop that you're entering. That's ludicrous, right? Maybe you do have 5 props that, you think are 60% plus hit rate, which would be, pretty solid damn props, then go for it, right? But 90% of the time, you're not going to have that. Just reality check for anyone out there. Gabe Davis is minus 140, but again, he's on the Bills, so probably not that second man that we're looking for. Let's see if we can find anyone else in the Bucs as a pair. So it might be that Godwin under. Let's see. Mike Evans, what's his yardage prop? I know he was juiced pretty good earlier. Got bumped up to 58.5. Is he bumped up on Underdog? He's not. So that could potentially be a spot of value. And let's go through the Rachaad White stuff. It's minus 148 under. I've unfortunately already maxed out my Rachaad White exposure, so I can't get any more there. Let's see what we got with Trey Palmer props. Pretty close to even money. So yeah, it's going to be a choice between these two. If I had to choose between them, I would probably go the Mike Evans over. The only reason being that if you think James Cook is going to outrush Rachaad White, right, that means that the Bills, in most circumstances, are going to do that playing from ahead, right? When James Cook is getting more touches and somebody like Rachaad White is getting less touches in that same kind of script, it means the Buccaneers are going to have to throw the ball more, right? So by not taking that under on Godwin, which might be pretty decent prop as well, the Mike Evans one was juiced a little bit more than what we had with the Godwin prop because there's an entire 1 yard difference there too, right? With what we have down here with Mike Evans. That's why I like that one a little bit more, right? It fits the script. It's the same kind of value as that Chris Godwin prop and gives you a little good 2-man out there. So I won't be able to enter this one right now because I already maxed out this prop at the bottom. For obvious reasons, I think this is like the best prop on the board at this point there in Underdog. But feel free to go ahead and let me know if you have any questions for prize picks, which I don't see as much value on this side. Let me go ahead and share my screen, but it's always worth going through the board. Maybe something will open up. They do move their projections quite a bit on prize picks, so there might be stuff that opens up. So they've got Rachaad White at 45.5. Evans is the whole way up at 60.5 there. That's aggressive, right? That's taking that juice and running with it. So obviously that prop and Underdog, pretty decent value. Let's see, they got Kincaid up to 41.5. Love that 35.5 line. I got even more now. Let's see. Let's look at fantasy score. They're usually a little bit late to bump these. They bump a lot of the other categories before they get to fantasy score. So let's see. They have Kincaid at 10 FS. That's crazy. Let's see what they have. Rachaad White up 12.5. Wouldn't hate that fade, frankly. 12.5 fantasy score when he's juiced way under on his receptions prop. I think he's at 3.5 receptions. He's juiced well under. And then his touchdown prop, let me take a look at that one too. Anytime TD, where is he at? He's minus 221 for the no, plus 157 for the over. Yeah, if I was going to look at prize picks right now, this under on Rachaad White, probably my favorite prop. Again, they're really late to bump some of these props. And per my projections, I do have Rachaad White at 13.2 points, but that's like best case scenario. That includes all the ceiling sort of performances. His floor tonight, especially if they're playing from behind, right, like we'd expect, is super low, right? In fact, most of his outcomes are below that 12.5 point mark. So my projections do kind of make me not like that as much, right? I would rather have seen like 12 points, right, rather than 13.2, like what we have with Rachaad White. But yeah, based on the current board, wouldn't hate that, right? He is minus 150 to the under, Rachaad White. So you could just take his under on rushing yards. I think that's a good way to go about it. Is his rush attempt still at 12.5? It is. You could go with that too, which speaking of, on DraftKings, let me see where they have his line. I'm assuming this has to be going towards the under. Everything, right, is kind of siding towards that script. Yeah, he's minus 140 on DraftKings towards the under. So yeah, if I was going to take anything at this very moment, it it would probably be this under at 12.5 rushing attempts. Just because we do have that sportsbook data that's backing us up, right? Makes me feel a little bit better about the spot. But if you wanted to fade the fantasy score prop too, like 100%, like either one of these guys at 12.5 makes quite a bit of sense. In terms of a pair over there for the Bills side, let's see. I haven't put a lot in over here in Prize Picks yet, if you can't tell. The value on Underdog has been a lot better. A lot of it's because they have guys like Evans at 60.5, right? I tend to agree with that. They have Kincaid at 41.5. I tend to agree with that, right? Their projections are a lot more modest over there in Underdog. That's why a lot of my exposure is there right now. Let's see. Yeah, these receptions props, I don't know. Maybe not my favorite slate for the Bills, but if you have a pairing over there for the Bills, feel free to go ahead and mix it in with either of those white props. Yeah, Allen INT is probably a trap. I guess you could go like Allen rushing yards. He got bumped up on Prize Picks. Look at that. So if anything, maybe you try and find a fade for the Bills, right? Because this board is clearly priced higher than what they have on Underdog. Compared to sportsbook odds, a lot of these projections are higher than what you have on the sportsbooks. So, and just out of curiosity, do they have a target prop up? They do. He's at 10.5. That seems a little high for Stephon Diggs. Just, it looks like if anything, yeah, it's fades. This is why I haven't entered anything over here, because it's a bullshit board. Let's see. He's at 1.5 field goals. What are the odds on DraftKings? Let's compare. 1.5 field goal props, by the way, are normally a pretty decent spot for unders. That's why I'm checking this. Let's see. So his field goal made prop is minus 130 under, right? So yeah, if I was going to do anything right now, right, you've got a prop here that's minus 130. You've got another one that's minus 140 that you can take between these two. Would probably be the way that I go about it, right? This Tyler Bass prop is extremely variant, right, because it is a field goal made prop. But if you're just looking at pure odds, it's probably the best bet that you're getting here over here in Prize Picks. They're just bump heavy. They've priced the board a little bit higher, especially in some of the key players that I like. So unfortunately, not the best value on that side. Let's bring up Underdog. Let's actually try and find a pair for that prop that we were looking at before, because I want to get exposure to this Mike Evans prop, right? It's an entire 3-yard difference, and I don't have exposure to it yet. So I want to get that myself. So let's look over here on Pinnacle. Let's find a decently juiced prop over there for the Bills and to move on. I knew we were looking at a few before. I just can't remember them off the top of my head. We were looking at it too long ago. So Josh Allen, I'm pretty sure was already bumped. So we can't get that. Yes, he was already bumped up. Let's see. What else do we got? James Cook prop? Probably not James Cook. They're all pretty close to even money. We do have that Gabe Davis prop we were looking at. That's one of them, now that I remember. So let's throw that in the shopping cart for right now. That's also available on, I believe, on Prize Picks. Let me double check. So he has that same projection. Yeah, so actually, rather than that Tyler Bass prop, let me just circle back over here to Prize Picks. This is actually a slip I'm going to get exposure to myself right now. This under on Rachaad White, right, is minus 140. This over on Gabe Davis is minus 140. So instead of a minus 140, minus 130, we've got two minus 140 props here. Another one that works in terms of correlation, right? If Gabe Davis is going to be highly effective, it does mean that the Buffalo Bills have a better chance of going out there and, you know, winning this game. And if they're playing from ahead, Rachaad White's not going to rush the ball as much. So it's not the best correlation, right? It's not like that one rival slip that we went with that is highly correlated with itself, but it's good enough, right? It has at least some slight correlation that we can work with. But cycling back to Underdog now, let me find a pairing for this prop because I want to get some exposure myself. I guess we could just go with this, right? Let's do that. So this will be the pairing I'm going with personally for Mike Evans. So there's a little bit of value on the board right now. There's not a lot of crazy value. Again, my favorite prop on the board, if you're just joining us, let me find it and throw it in here for you guys, because I'm sure there's a few people that just got in here, and I want to make sure you don't miss out, because this rivals matchup that we've got is ridiculous. So it's a rushing yards. It's this one right here. So they've got James Cook against White, only a 4.5-yard difference. Their projections as of right now, I believe, are like 8.5 yards between each other. So obviously more than this 4.5 adjustment. And then Rashad White's minus 150 under, and James Cook is slightly juiced over, right, at his prop. So check those out, boys. That's all I've got for the live stream, though. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Smash that like button on the way out of here. What's going on, Carmi? You unfortunately just caught me as I'm getting out of here. So I'll give you a few seconds. If you have any questions you wanted to throw by me, throw it down in chat right now. But welcome on and appreciate the support, guys. Like I was saying, though, smash that like button for me, right? Let's get that like numbers up. And let's go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. We're going to be doing content for the main slate this weekend, also for Monday Night Football, so you don't want to miss any of those when they drop. And of course, on my Twitter, make sure you follow over there. Something I'm going to be trying to promote a little bit more is I'm going to start posting more free slips, right? I know I do the YouTube content. People are able to check that out and whatnot, but I want to start putting out more prop-based content, which props move too quickly, right? It's why I don't do a lot of prop videos on YouTube, because usually by the time I'm done recording the video, the stuff's already moved, right? It happens a lot more often than not. So I think a good way to handle that is just to start posting them on Twitter. So if you're somebody that's more of a prop person, right, that watches these live streams, follows my content for that purpose, definitely make sure you're following the Twitter. That's going to be where a lot of that posted. I've been doing that for NBA over the first few days. The free slips I've posted for NBA have not gone well so far. Yesterday went like 1-1. Day one, it was like 1-2. Outside of that, I've been hitting like everything for NBA though. So hopefully the curse ends. The process has been there. It feels like, and I even joked about it yesterday. I was like, if I post it on Twitter, it won't hit. If I only post it in the Discord, it hits. So if you're in the Discord, you've been seeing those NBA posts, but make sure to check them out over there on Twitter too. Let's see, is starting both Ds a bad idea? I think it's a real fringe outcome, bro, but you could do it. He's a minus 3.5 now on Underdog. What do you mean by that? Minus 3.5. Did they adjust it or something? Let's see. It looks the same on my end. I don't know what you mean by minus 3.5. Are you saying just the line for the game is minus 3.5? Let's see. Because I don't think that's true, right? It was a 10-point spread. I couldn't see it moving an entire touchdown. Yeah, no, it's 9.5. I don't know what you're saying there, man. Feel free to go ahead and clarify if you want to, though. That's all I've got for the live stream. Appreciate all the support here on the channel. We'll be doing the same thing for the main slate this week. Probably be a video this time rather than a live stream. Should check out LeBron 14 field goal attempts. I will crush because I haven't done my NBA research yet. And honestly, guys, as soon as the stream ends, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I will look at it with you here, right? What I'm about to do anyways. So let's look at it. So there's only 2 games tonight for NBA, so there's probably not going to be as much value. So if you are looking for that over there on the Twitter, may or may not be a post tonight because there's only 2 games. When there's like 6+ games or like 12 games from last night, there will 100% be stuff on there. But let's see what we've got. So let's find the Lakers game. It's the second one against Phoenix. You said 14 field goal attempts, right? 14 field goals attempted. You're saying over or under? Let's do some research because honestly, guys, my process for basketball, and I was up till like 7 a.m. last night coding a new prop tool for NBA, is mostly fantasy based, right? That's where most of my expertise is. And a lot of the stuff that is useful for props, like odds and stuff like that, normally it's just baked into my projections, right? So if you guys don't know, I'm big data, big coding, big CS kind of guy, right? And my process for fantasy is as automated as humanly possible, right? So I don't have to be looking at every player's given odds on the board, right? That's just, it's hell. It's not effective. Physically as a human, you're not capable of doing it. So a lot of the prop stuff, I'm not as sharp on as the fantasy stuff. So that's why I've been trying to repurpose my code to make it more prop based. And it's been working so far this season. So I'm pretty excited about it. So I've started to share my slips and whatnot. But let's see where they have him priced. So they've got his over on points. He's only at 19.5 points. The fuck? So it would be the under for sure, right? That you're considering, I'm imagining, right? Because they've got him at 20.5 points. How many field goal attempts? How many field goals made do they have him at? Do they have that prop on here? Doesn't look like it, right? They just have him at the 20.5 points. What about his free throw prop? His free throw prop's 3.5. So if he's at a 19.5 point projection on the sharper books, 3.5 free throws. I mean, 16 points made, right? Of just like regular field goals. And makes 16 points. He's like a career 40% shooter. I don't know. It seems like a pretty accurate line. I don't know. Let me know what you're thinking, Crush. You saying over? Yeah, I think it's a pretty accurate line, personally, because I was going to say, like, if they had him at like 23 and a half points like they did for day one, for sure the over, right? Like that would normally be a really low line for him. The fact that Pinnacle has him at 19 and a half is why I started to do that backwards math, right? I'm like, okay, they're expecting 16 points from field goals, which means on average, like, I mean, probably like 8 field goals made, right? Because he does make 3-pointers. So let's say like 8 field goals made. If he's like a 50% shooter, I guess it would be over, right? Might be right about that. It's definitely a lean towards the over. I just don't know if it's as mispriced as you may think it is, if that makes sense. Bills or Jags defense? Jags aren't playing tonight, but Bills defense makes quite a bit of sense. You have a write-up on Twitter. Let me check it out, Crush. What's your Twitter, by the way? So I can check that out because I'll bring it up right now. I'll give you a little shout out, Crush. But most off, I want to see your reasoning for it, right? I want to see what you're thinking for it. So let me know down in chat if you have that. I will bring it up right now. Give you a little shout out in the process, especially if I agree with what you're doing there, right? Because I'm going to take it here on stream as well. So let me know. Let me stop sharing so I can bring up Twitter real quick. Is it Crush? Is Crush your Twitter? Let's see. You took his points on Sleeper. What's his Sleeper line? I haven't played on Sleeper in a minute, but I've heard good things about him. Obviously, their payouts are pretty sweet when you get the extra payout. Let's see. Should check out his game log. For sure. Yeah, the game logs, I'm sure, help. That 19 and a half point projection, though, right? I think that's what we kind of have to remember here is that that's lower than normal, right? So they're either expecting him to play less tonight, right? That's what that's telling me, or they think the matchup's really tough, which I think it could be either one. Logan parlays, yeah, I'll take a look. Let me find his line on Sleeper real quick, though. You're saying his point line looked good. He's at 19 and a half. Yeah, I could see taking the 19 and a half, right? If we bring up Pinnacle, especially because it's even money on Sleeper, it was like minus 140, right? Honestly, I think that's the best line, right? Look at this. He's minus 149 for 19 and a half points in on Sleeper, which I only have on my phone right now. I've got to sign in here on my Mac. That's going to be a really good prop because it's an even multiplier there. So yeah, I think if anything, I'd take that one, man. That seems like a really solid prop, which I appreciate the shout on that. Let me bring up your Twitter. Like I was saying, it's Logan Parlays, right? Hopefully I don't unplug my mic. This shit happens all the time, especially when I have to fucking type on stream. I'll bet you follow me. Should have been able to find you easier. My bad. Let's see. Let's give the boy the shout too, because I'm 100% going to take that point prop. But here's the reasoning on the 14 and a half, right? He's down to 14 now. So it's an even better value than when he got it before. Covered 53 of 55 times. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially now that I got bumped down. The only thing I want to check on, which I'm actually going to do right now, is what's going on, right? Why is the projection lower? And again, I literally have not started my NBA research, so it might be real obvious why that's the case. I'm assuming there's a minutes limit, right? There's got to be something out right now which is causing that. And which, by the way, let's speak on a minutes limit real quick. I know we're going into this NBA tangent right now, but last night they said there was a minutes limit for LaMelo Ball, which was first off completely BS, right? I believe he went over the 30-minute mark that he was supposed to be limited to, and they lowered all of his props down. They took like his assist from like 8.5 to 6.5. His points, they lowered it. I took the over on every single prop except his points. So I took his over on rebounds, on assists, on rebounds plus assists, and his fantasy score, which they really lowered. And he hit the over on all of them. Half of this late news that comes out that like people buy into in a lot of the sports books, but like adjust their odds for, is BS, is a complete smokescreen. Especially when a guy's not injured. Like LaMelo Ball, by the way, was completely healthy, was not on the injury report whatsoever, and they claimed he had a minutes limit. If that ever happens, this is just a PSA for any of the NBA people that are still here. That is BS. Every single time it is BS. And if he said he'll play around 29 minutes again, yeah, you meant it's BS. I will 100% with you on that. It's the same thing as the LaMelo Ball conversation, right? Where they were like, oh, we're going to take it easy with him, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they'll take it easy on him until it's a really close game at the end and they need him to play the entire fourth quarter. That's going to happen if they need him out there, right? They can't afford to just be losing like every game. They're not an elite team anymore. So I'm 100% with you on that. The the minutes limits kind of like smoke screens that they post are BS. And I'm just trying to find that post, the one that's causing it. I guess it's not that big of news, right? I don't know. I think you're onto something there, Crush. I like it. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the live stream. I've got a few lineups to put together for NFL, also some NBA research to get done. So best of luck out there, whether you're playing DFS or playing some props tonight, and may you see some green in your accounts.